Hey guys, Sly here, and welcome back to another episode of the Caspian Game Awards. So, I do apologize that I did not stream yesterday. It turns out that there was a lot of issues going around when it comes to where I was living. Basically, I experienced a power outage. Yeah, so because of that, I wasn't really able to stream as often as much as I wish, because I wish I was able to do this yesterday, but unfortunately, because of a lot of because everything was out for a good day. Thankfully, by the time that I was going to bed, power finally went back on. But for a big majority of yesterday and a little bit of Friday, we had no power. So that was really annoying. But thankfully, I was able to get all these just in time for kind of the beginning of March. Which, by the way, yes, I know we're already in March. That is really weird. I'm not gonna lie. But before we get into this, I just want to let you guys know that I will, in fact, be doing my next playthrough starting tomorrow. So rest assured, I will be going back into doing more Twitch stuff. Now, I know I have been kind of slacking a bit anyways, even just despite the power outage. But I just wanted to sort of apologize for that. It's mostly because I've been working on a lot of just stuff in the background, specifically a lot of school stuff, as well as the project that I've been hinting about for the past couple of years. Not Cryfall, that's a completely different project. But as far as big projects go, I've been kind of focusing on that, if that makes sense. So I genuinely do apologize for those who have been wanting to see more streams for me, or even just content in general, but it's because of just all the stuff that I've been working on just sort of behind the scenes. It has been kind of affecting a bit when it comes to doing these streams, and it didn't help that the past couple of days we literally had a power outage. So, which, don't worry, as you can see, I'm completely fine. I'm still awake and alive and all that fun stuff. So rest assured, I'm personally doing pretty good. So it's just that was kind of annoying to deal with. So but anyways, so yeah, this is episode 4 technically, and this is actually going to be the last episode where we will be covering, a game award show for any of the years from the 2020s. For now, of course, because obviously we're not even halfway through the decade yet, and well, we just made it through a sixth of this year. So, and hopefully by then there will be a 2024 Caspian Game Awards to comment on potentially how bad this next upcoming one's going to be. So, but that pretty much leads us into, well, us talking about the year 2020, which in a lot of ways it was
not good.
It was a pretty rough year for everyone. I mean, as far as just me personally, I don't want to get into the details, but this is going to be a bit of a touchy year to talk about. Thankfully though, 2020, as far as video games are concerned, was actually a pretty decent year. Compared to 2021 and 2022, 2020 was actually real, it was basically godsend compared to those two freaking years. And as far as most of the games, obviously there were some major releases that were dog shit from 2020, which I will be talking about one of them specifically. I already talked about Cyberpunk in our last one, but as far as this is concerned, yeah, 2020 was actually a pretty decent year. I don't know if I would say that it was an amazing year for gaming, but as far as a lot of the notable releases, this was actually a pretty decent year. So trust me, we're not going to be having another year like last time with 2021 for a good while. So rest assured, this is going to be pretty good. As like for the next, I'd say several of these I guess podcast episodes, this is actually a really it's actually going to be pretty decent as far as categories go, for most categories I should say. But yeah, but I mean, as far as everything else about 2020, it was a fucking shit fest. I mean, obviously we can talk about the pandemic as much as we want. We can also talk about a lot of just I'm just gonna be blunt, just a lot of the political drama that happened that year, and also just a lot of the also a lot of personal stuff. All I'm gonna say is 2019 and 2020, while they were pretty good for gaming, I do have a bit of a sour taste in my mouth for both of those years, because those were some of the worst years in my entire life. And that has nothing to do with the pandemic. So if I do still look a bit down, it's because 2020 and 2019 were not really good years for me personally. But I will try to put that bias away, especially when we're talking about games. So I hope you guys at least understand in that regard. And also, 2020 was the year that I actually became a Twitch affiliate. So I want to, again, thank you guys for sticking with me up until that point, because that was pretty awesome. So, but rest assured, 2020 was an interesting year as far as gaming, and we're going to be covering at least my personal takes on 2020, because even though the games were pretty good, the game awards from 2020 were just straight up
Not good.
It was actually really bad. Like 2020's game awards is easily one of the worst throughout the entire history of just award ceremonies ever. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. It was actually a disaster. Anyone who saw it live knows exactly what I'm talking about. And it's not just because of a certain game that won. Multiple other games that got nominated and also won did not deserve. This, again, I came up with the phrase Hootyitis, basing it off of Hootie and the Blowfish being the winner for Best New Artist, even though they were objectively the worst group to do it. This was basically the gaming equivalent of what happened at the Grammys at that time. So,
Don't yell at me, yell at the Grammys.
But of course, we'll get into that. But let's actually get into just sort of the things that for those who are pretty new. We'll be covering different categories where we basically trim it down to where it's mostly the categories that truly matter the most. So, and as you can see, this is actually the first of this show that we actually have a new category. So originally we had just Best Indie Game, but because it's been about 3-4 years since 2020 has been, a year, I think that's actually good, a good enough of a time difference to where I feel comfortable of giving a new award out for Best New Game by a New Studio, which I'll go over the rules on that once we get to it, because it may sound like it's going to be very restrictive, but it's actually not as restrictive as you think. As far as the other categories go, they're pretty much the same. So Best Action Adventure, Best RPG, Best Shooter, and then Best Sim, and then Best Multiplayer, Best DLC, Best Remake / Remaster, Best Art Direction, Best Narrative, and then of course the titular Game of the Year. So again, this year was pretty bad as far as the winners go for, honestly, a lot of these categories. Not all of them, but yeah, this is gonna be a very similar tone to when I talked about with 2023's Game Awards, if I'm gonna be honest. Actually, probably worse, because this year was actually really bad. Like, I'm not even trying to, like, make a joke here. Like, this year is honestly was kind of like 2023's Game Awards already made me, like, basically was like the spark that made me want to do this. But if I'm gonna be honest, 2020 is kind of the culmination of everything that I find wrong with Game Award shows. And that is exactly why I'm doing this podcast, because this show especially was a disaster. Like, holy shit. Like, this was a genuinely really bad one, and I'm going to fix it for everyone. Even though I'm showing my bias, I'm fixing 2020's nominees. So, I know. Thank you. I you know what? Please clap. I love the attention here. So, but in all seriousness, though, this is going to definitely be a heavily improved version of this award show. So, even if you don't agree with me on everything, you have to at least agree that, especially considering hindsight is 2020, pun intended that time. Yeah, like, I'm making sure that we fix this. So, as far as the rules go, just as a fresh reminder, these are the major 5 rules that I have when it comes to with this podcast. So, rule number 1, the game had to have been released between January 1st and December 31st. No weird cutoff dates. It has to have been released in that entire time frame of that year, so that we are fair in our assessment that the game is deserving of a nominee from that said year. So, no weird Grammy shit. So, like, yeah, like, because, again, the Grammys has some weird shit where they cut off, like, the second half of the previous year and then the first half of the year. It's stupid.
Don't yell at me, yell at the Grammys.
Rule number 2. It must have had a decent to good launch. Games that were fixed after the fact will only apply by a case-by-case basis. If it's a game that was absolute dog shit at launch, but eventually became okay, I'm not going to nominate it. However, if it was a game that was absolutely terrible at launch, but ended up being amazing, in my personal opinion, by the way, not everyone else's, then I may decide to qualify it. It depends on a base by case scenario. We're not judging it based off of user reviews on Metacritic or shit, because I tried doing that. It was terrible. Rule number 3: no games that are in early access. So, unfortunately, there are going to be a couple of games that pains me to say, but they do not qualify because they were in early access, and in some cases, they are still in early access. So, yeah. And then as for Game of the Year, this is where the Metacritic score typically matter. It needs to be a game that has to have at least an 80% between both user and critic scores. And it has to be a completely, new game. So no remakes or remasters are allowed. And then last but not least, keep in mind that only games that I'm personally interested in will be chosen. So, because for me, gameplay, art style, and aesthetics matters to me more than a lot of other people. So, because I'm I'm more specific in my interests than a lot of other people. So, and of course, the hidden rule here is keep in mind this is just all my personal opinion. If you disagree with me, that is completely fine. Of course, let me know in the chat over there. Or just let me know on, like, Discord or whatever, and you can share your lists and all that fun stuff. But yeah, either way, I think we're pretty much good. Though before we actually get into this, I am gonna get some water. So I will be right back, but I will only take like a few seconds. So Okay, I'm back. So, I think I pretty much made my cases clear. So let's get into this. Let's get into our first category of the night. So, best indie game. Games that are created by smaller studios or one person. Pretty obvious. So, you know, I'm pretty sure you know what an indie game is by now. So, and if you guys aren't, like, if you guys want to be caught up, go watch our other videos, because I think I am going to make sure that I just kind of do this. And again, we got our envelope. So, there you go. So, 2020 was actually a pretty decent year as far as indie games go. Like, there were actually quite a lot of indie games that got a ton of attention. As far as the ones that were nominated from the Game Awards, these are the games that they nominated. So we have Carry On, Fall Guys, which I'll get into that in a little bit. Spiritfarer, Spelunky 2, and Hades. So, I mean, as far as Carry On goes, sorry. As far as like indie games go, this makes more sense at the time. Like, I mean, like, I'll get into the Fall Guys thing in a little bit, but as far as like best indie games that are nominated here, Carry On, for those who don't know, it's a horror game where you're actually playing as the monster. That's a cool concept. I do recognize just kind of how cool that is and just how different it is, especially for a lot of other games, especially since a lot of horror games end up having you run away from the monster instead. This time you are the monster. That's cool. It's not really my thing though. Honestly, same thing with Spelunky 2, which this is actually a sequel to a game from 2008 of all things. Jesus Christ. So, yeah, it took them a long while for them to make the sequel. But yeah, this is kind of a platformer sort of thing, which, again, more power to them, but it's not my personal thing. As far as the other games go, Spiritfarer and Hades, now this is what we're talking about. So, Spiritfarer is kind of a more adventurous, narrative-driven indie game. Do apologize if there's any background, but like as far as like, I don't know, it's kind of a charming game. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's just kind of a neat little adventure game. If you want to play it, go right ahead. And of course, you know, one of the two big games that are on here that was released was Hades. I actually streamed this game back in 2021. This game pretty much caught the world by storm, and it put Supergiant on the map as far as, you know, games that had a huge impact. Like, as far as roguelikes go, as far as, you know, indie games go, this pretty much hit the scene like that. And, well, it's still highly regarded as being like one of the best, you know, games of 2020, which, you know, I actually would agree. Like, yes, I don't typically like roguelikes, mostly because I find them to be very fucking annoying to go through. But the difference between this and most other roguelikes is that Hades is way more fair as far as its gameplay goes. Like, you level up in between runs to make you stronger and all that stuff. And it just makes the replay value of this significantly better than a lot of roguelikes, in my opinion. So, and then we've got Fall Guys, which this was one of two multiplayer games that also caught the world by storm in 2020, which, again, this one, I'm sorry, if you like Fall Guys, that's fine. I just don't care. Because, like, I don't like the aesthetics. I'm not a huge fan of party games in general, which is why, like, I don't know, party games are just not really my thing, you know? I don't know. I'm someone who prefers to have a bit more teeth to their games. And also, if I'm gonna be honest, I don't even think this technically counts as an indie. This doesn't count as an indie game, does it? I mean, eventually Epic Games would buy out the rights of Fall Guys, but I don't know. Even before that buyout, this just doesn't seem like an indie. It just does not feel right to be a nominee for an indie game. You know, like it just doesn't feel right. So, and again, this one I don't agree with, especially since this game fell down hard after a couple of months. Like no one gave a shit about this game by 2021. Like there's been attempts to try to revive it, but I definitely do think that this game is a case where it made more sense at the time as opposed to it being something that people genuinely went back to. Because even a lot of my friends who loved this game, they haven't played the game in like over a year, probably 2 years for all I know. So that's why I definitely fundamentally disagree with this being on the list. So I actually don't remember what was the game that actually won? Okay, Hades was the winner. Okay, valid. Way better choice, especially in hindsight. So, and yeah, you can probably see where we're going with is not a terrible selection, but these are the games that I would personally choose as far as best indie games go. So, I would still keep Spiritfarer and I would keep Hades. But as far as another roguelike that is on this list, or that I would actually nominate, I would nominate Risk of Rain 2, another game I actually streamed back in 2022. So, which by the way, as a bit of a heads up, since we are starting to get further and further back, we are starting to see more and more games that I've actually played on stream. So do keep that in mind as we go through many of the games on here. But as far as like this game goes, I will admit it's not my favorite game, and again, it is a roguelike. But the difference between this is that this game is similar to Hades, is way more forgiving. As a matter of fact, if you are with like a crew of people, and you die, you actually respawn. You actually have the chance to either respawn in that same area that you're in, or you can respawn in the next area. So it's not really a roguelike technically. It's just more of an action adventure / third person shooter depending on your class. So like I appreciate that. I do find it to be a bit repetitive though. So that is kind of a bit of a problem. And also you may love or hate the art style. Which, speaking of, loving or hating it, we've got Factorio, which is a simulation game where you basically build up an entire, oil rig facility, and you just kind of build around it. It actually has a very similar aesthetic to a lot of like simulation games from the 90s and 2000s. Specifically, SimCity comes to mind, or Tropico, or like the Railroad Tycoon games specifically. So this is kind of more of a spiritual successor to those types of games. And that's pretty admirable. And then we've got Airborne Kingdom, which I think I have talked about this game in one of our E3 podcasts. But this game has such a cool aesthetic. Again, I'm already biased for Middle Eastern architecture, and to see a game that is essentially a steampunk Middle East game, holy shit, that is so fucking cool. Like, that is such a unique aesthetic. And again, this is a city builder. You build like an entire like flying city in the skies, which that's also really freaking cool. And I mean, the gameplay itself, it pretty much plays not too differently from something like Anno, but it's still very rewarding once you are able to overcome a lot of the challenges when building your city. And so yeah, like this is definitely a game that I would for sure nominate. So, but alas, these are my personal choices. Let's get into what I would choose as the winner. So yeah, those are our choices. Oh shoot, where's the paper? Oh, damn. Oh, here it is. Sorry. I forgot. I put the paper right there. So, those are our options. But who would I choose? Well, for 2020, on the Caspian Game Awards, the award for Best Indie Game goes to Hades! Again, this one is a pretty obvious winner. Like, this is actually one that I do genuinely agree with the Game Awards for choosing. Because, again, like I said, this game is challenging, yet it is a fair roguelike. It doesn't, I wouldn't say it holds your hand, but it is way more forgiving because of the progression that it has, and the fact that you're able to actually upgrade your character after each run makes it way more interesting and way more forgiving in the long run. Also, its fast-paced gameplay really lends itself into being a bit more skill-based as far as that. And also, admittedly, the characters themselves are pretty cool. Like, Zagreus, he's pretty relatable in the sense that he just kind of wants to, you know, not be around his father all the time, Hades. And a lot of the characters that you actually end up fighting as bosses, you actually get to talk with them, even if they kill you or whatever. And there's actually overlapping stories that happen, which I think is really freaking cool. It's just sort of their way of, yeah, it's basically them just trying to make sure that he doesn't get out, but it's because Hades is a very overprotective father. I don't know, I just find that dynamic pretty cool. And there's a lot of references to Greek mythology in this, and, well, obviously, because, you know, you're in Tartarus throughout the entire game. So, the game is literally called Hades, but you know what I mean. The point is that, like, this is a pretty cool modern interpretation of the Greek mythos that I appreciate. And I definitely do recommend you guys check it out, especially for people who hate roguelikes, because, again, this has come from someone who is a very anti, roguelike person, because I hate those types of games, usually. So, but yeah, that right there is my choice for best indie game. So, you know what? Good job, Hades. Fucking good job for impressing even the people at the Game Awards. So, not too bad. Not too bad of a start. But now let's actually get into our new nomination category. Best Game by New Studio. So, what do I mean by that? So, basically, these are basically games that aren't necessarily the best, game that your studio first ever made, which is what the Game Awards actually does. But I'm actually going to take a nod from, funny enough, the Grammys for their Best New Artist tab. Basically, it's games that are... It's not the first game that a studio or someone makes. It's the best game that... It's the game that got your studio attention, if that makes sense. So, for example, if your studio has made, like, a bunch of... Okay, this is actually a pretty common thing. Like, let's take id Software, for example. Their first game actually was not Wolfenstein 3D. They actually made a ton of other games, such as Commander Keen and Shit, there's a bunch of other games that I can't think of. But like they basically made a ton of games in the early 90s. From like 91 and 92 before they eventually made Wolfenstein 3D. But Wolfenstein 3D was the first game that was a huge commercial success and got them a bit of attention from the general public. So, in a scenario, if we were doing 1992, which I doubt we would, but I guess that's a spoiler just in case if I end up doing the rest of the 90s for the series, basically, that's how it would work. It's not the first game you ever made. It's the first game that got you attention. So that's kind of how we're doing best game by new studio. So I may come up with a better name later, but that's kind of what I chose. It was originally best game debut, but again, that's not what we're trying to do. But as far as what the Game Awards chose, because they do have the best debut. Here's what they nominated. So, as far as what they nominated, they nominated Carry On for this spot as well. I don't know why they were on about that game. I mean, it's fine. I just don't personally like it. And then we got Roki, Mortal Shell, Raji and Ancient Epic, and then Phasmophobia. So, again, I still disagree with Carry On being on the list. But as far as the other games go, Roki... I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I don't even know what this game's about. Yeah, I know. I did not do my research on this one. I'm assuming it's another adventure game. Maybe it's a horror game, but like not really horror, but just kind of something similar to something like Fran Bow. Although, to be fair, that is technically a horror game, but whatever. Like, it's kind of a more... Actually, is this made by the same studio who made Fran Bow? Or is it... No, it can't be, because, like... That game got a lot of attention. So, yeah, okay, it's definitely by a different studio, but whatever. So, yeah, I don't know. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I didn't nominate it. So, yeah. As far as Mortal Shell goes... This is a Soulsborne style game. This is a Dark Souls style game. Yeah, I don't know if I would agree with this one. And considering that this game kind of got lukewarm reception from a lot of other people, I'm tending to agree. So, yeah. And then we got Raji and Ancient Epic, which this is actually not an indie game. This is actually a AA game from India. So that's why I didn't nominate it for best indie game, because it's technically not an indie game. It's AA game. So, but as far as this game goes, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's an action adventure game, not too dissimilar to something like Legend of Zelda. So kind of similar to one of the games we've talked about last time. But yeah, like it takes a lot of myths from Pakistani and Indian culture and just goes with it. And, you know, I think that's pretty cool. So, as far as like that goes, I do agree with this game, especially since India, it doesn't get a lot of representation as far as game studios are concerned. And so to see this studio, which I forgot the name of it, but to see like an Indian studio get a decent amount of attention, that's actually pretty awesome. Like, especially like at, you know, one of the most watched game award shows just of all time. So Nodding Head Games, that's their studio. So yeah, again, they're not technically an indie game or an indie studio. They are a AA studio. So, and then last but not least, we got Phasmophobia, which, as a spoiler alert, they were the ones that actually won this category. So, I really want to agree with this because Phasmophobia looks cool. My friends played it. I played a little bit myself. I didn't stream it because for whatever reason, my computer is very fucky with a game like this. Even though this game is not that big as far as file size, but whatever. Like, this game looks cool. It looks scary as fuck, but also pretty awesome if you're just playing with a bunch of other people. Like, this is definitely runner up for a good, best indie game thing. Like, I really want to nominate it. But there's one problem. This game is an early access game. Yeah, that goes against the rule. I really want to nominate it. Honestly, I would love to be able to, have this be, an fucking easy snag for this. But because this game is technically not fully released, in good faith, I just cannot nominate it for it. Maybe once this game is fully released, hopefully this year or next year, then we'll nominate it for 2024 or 2025. But as it stands, it's still an early access game. So, it's been like that for the past 3.5 years. I have granted, I have no idea if they've updated the game, because again, I haven't played it until actually fairly recently, as I mean Halloween recently. So, this past Halloween recently. So because of that, I don't know, man. This is just kind of one of those games where it's I want to. It pains me to say it too, because I really do want to nominate it, but because we've already also not nominated a bunch of games that have been in early access and are still in early access, I gotta stick by my guns. So I'm sorry, but I unfortunately have to pass on this one.
What a shame.
I know, JC Denton, I know, but what did I end up choosing? Because again, we're not just doing this based off of indie studios. We're doing this based off of AA and even AAA studios. So what were the nominees I actually ended up choosing? So, okay, well, I don't know why it did that, but whatever. Okay, as far as indie games, or not indie, these are all games that are basically got a lot of attention. So I nominated Risk of Rain 2 again, as well as Hades again. So because the original Risk of Rain, well, yes, it has its fans. It was a very niche game, if that makes sense. Nobody gives a shit about the first Risk of Rain. As a matter of fact, my friends who are, who love Risk of Rain 2, they straight up said that Risk of Rain 1 is just straight up a bad game. So, as a result, Risk of Rain 2 gets the nod, since this was the first game that got the studio attention. Same thing with Hades, actually. Supergiant, well, yes, they've been around for 10 years prior. As a matter of fact, they've released 3 other games before Hades. Those games weren't really well known. This was the first game that got them actually, on the map. And obviously people are hella excited for Hades 2 whenever that comes out later this year. So that's why I'm nominating this game here as well. I'm nominating Raji as well, but I'm also nominating Deep Rock Galactic and Ghost Runner. So Deep Rock Galactic, obviously I've played it several times for you guys. You should know exactly what it is. It's a Left 4 Dead style cooperative shooter game with a lot of inspiration from other games such as Red Faction and Minecraft as far as its level design is concerned. And yeah, no, this game is a fucking blast every time I play it. As a matter of fact, I was actually playing it with a friend of mine last week, just kind of on a private thing, and we had a lot of fun. They kind of showed me a little bit more about just a lot of the progression that's in the game, and just a lot of the rewards that you do for doing a lot of challenges. And yeah, no, that was actually a pretty fun time. I thoroughly still do enjoy this game. And I mean, once I get my new computer, I'm definitely going to be streaming this way more often. It's just, the problem is well, my computer's kind of shitty in the sense that I can't even play games that are only 3 gigabytes of download that are just a couple years newer than it. Again, I don't know. There's something wrong with my graphic card, but that's a whole other issue. But the other game I'm nominating here, Ghost Runner. So, no more games. I think this is what the studio is called. And, well, we talked about the sequel, Ghost Runner 2, in 2023's list. So, naturally, Ghost Runner would be on here. And, I mean, yeah, it's a platformy action game, and it's a pretty cool action game. I would definitely recommend it to anyone who kind of wants a proper cyberpunk game from 2020. So, I mean, that should already sell you right there. But let's get into the winner. It's actually one that might surprise you guys. So, let's get into it. So, the award for the best game by a new studio from 2020 goes to Deep Rock Galactic. So, this is how you do a cooperative shooter really damn well. So, again, this one is kind of a weird one because, again, this is a game that I've actually played plenty of times at this point. But I do genuinely believe that this is a pretty damn good game as far as just a game by a new studio. So, which, by the way, one rule I forgot to add is that, like, the game has to be an original IP. I forgot to mention that. But this is an original IP, so there you go. But anyways, the reason why I say that this is the best is just, I mean, first of all, the amount of content that is in this game. The amount of weapons, upgrades, just the innovations used within the geomod style of, level design. Its unique, rocky space dwarf miner sort of aesthetic is pretty awesome. The amount of just, like I said, just customization that's in the game, and the fact that, like, the only other thing that you have to, like, that you pay for with this game is cosmetics, which, granted, I still prefer to have, in-game progression when it comes to cosmetics, but the fact that there's no, like, major expansion pack or, like, micro DLC or, like, level, like, everything that you see is what you get, that is a hell of a freaking win in my book, and I easily am going to give this game the nod as far as the best game by a new studio. So, hooray. Like, you guys can yell rock and stone, but I don't particularly like that phrase, if I'm going to be honest.
What a shame.
I know. Shut up. Anyways, so that's the best game by a new studio. Best action adventure game. So, all those categories that you see above. This is kind of where things get a bit dicey. And this is where everything just steamrolls down a cliff when it comes to the Game Awards. Because this is a representative of a problem that I noticed with 2020's Game Awards, even back then. So, God, this is so stupid, man. I am still upset about this, by the way, because the winner should have been so obvious. But let's get into the nominees. So, what did the Game Awards nominate? Like, what did the Game Awards nominate for Best Action Adventure Game? Oh my god. Okay. So, let's actually go over the positives first. So, Ori and the Will o' Wisps. Valid choice. Good sequel to the Ori and the Blind Forest. So, like, that one I actually do thoroughly agree. Even though Metroidvanias aren't entirely, or at least completely my thing, obviously Shantae is the exception, I can at least respect those style of games. And this game is very beautiful. Like, both Ori games are so goddamn beautiful. Like, that is one thing that I will always give to the team who made those games, is that, like, the art team is like, they did not just a 10 out of 10, they did a fucking 20 out of 10. Like, this game is, like, an example that I will use as far as, like, video games can be considered art. Like, this game is genuinely one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. So, and you know what else I also agree with? Ghost of Tsushima. I mean, again, the sucker punch bias is showing, because again, you know, Sly Cooper is one of my favorite it's my favorite video game franchise of all time. And, you know, this is a sucker punch game. Granted, 15 years removed, but this game is pretty much the culmination of the 20 years worth of experience that this team has put their souls into, and they put out, honestly, one of the best open world action adventure games to come out in that sort of 5-year span between like 2015 and 2020. Like, this game is easily one of the most compelling just games out there, and I am so glad that this game got a lot of recognition from people from whenever this came out. So that this game, I wholeheartedly agree. Like, that one, I definitely agree should be on this list. Like, no disagreement there. Everything else is a bit of a fucking blow when it comes to its choices, though. So let's start with Jedi Fallen Order. So this is actually a game that I fully streamed back in 2020. This was actually the newest game that I played at the time. Problem is that I did not save the VODs. Though I did mention that I will be replaying this game. I think this game's actually a phenomenal game. It's a fantastic game. And it's kind of why I regret a little bit that I did not nominate Jedi Survivor for 2023, because unfortunately, although to be fair, the PC version was fucking terrible, but it was only the PC version that was bad. The console versions were fucking amazing for Survivor. But this game does not. That being said, this game does not like qualify for this, because this game came out in 2019, not 2020. It actually came out in November of 2019, so I don't know why the hell this was not nominated for best action adventure for that year. Because, like, I thought the cutoff date was December, not November. So yeah, that one. Oh, that doesn't make sense. Assassin's Creed Valhalla came out in fucking November too. Like, these both those games came out in fucking November. I don't know. Again, I haven't even announced what the game won with this category, and we already have massive problems here. Is that a game that literally came out exactly a year before this game got nominated? Like, Jesus Christ, Game Awards. So yeah, again, this is not the small. I can tell you the fucking smallest problem about this Game Awards, but this should set the tone as to how terrible this Game Awards was, because they just straight up nominated a game that came out over a year after a game that's also being nominated. So I don't know why this game was nominated for 2020. It makes no sense why it's on this list. Spoiler alert. It's going to be nominated for Action Adventure for 2019 for us, but not 2020. It should not be here. Another game that, well, speaking of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, okay, I've got a confession. Obviously, I do like Assassin's Creed. I think it's pretty obvious, because Assassin's Creed is very similar to Sly Cooper in the sense that, you know, it's quasi open world games. The newer games have been open world fully, where you just kind of go around doing a lot of stealth and dealing with a bunch of guards and, doing some pickpocketing, and, well, you follow a long line of thieves slash assassins. Like, that's basically kind of the same premise for both those franchises. And as far as Assassin's Creed Valhalla goes, I like the game, but I don't think I would nominate it for Best Action Adventure. Well, okay, first of all, it's not an action adventure game. It's actually an RPG. So there's already a problem right there. But also, if I'm going to be honest, this game is way too long. This game is like a 60, 70 hour game. And a lot of it is just kind of like filler content. Like, it's just a lot of fluff, which unfortunately a lot of Ubisoft games are very guilty of, especially in the past, like, about, I'd say 10 years, per se. This is another example of that. So, granted, this game is not bad. I don't agree with people who say that this game is a genuinely awful game, because it's not. It's not Ghost Recon Breakpoint bad, people. It's not that bad. It's not that bad, I should say. But it's still like a 5 out of 10. Even though I actually kind of like it, it's not particularly something that, like, I agree should have been a nominee. So, and then we got Miles Morales, which I've already talked about how I'm not a big Spider-Man fan, and I'm kind of getting sick and tired of Spider-Man. I don't want to go over that conversation. If you want to hear more about it, go watch the 2023 list. But this one's just kind of a more, me personally, I'm not interested in. And of course, I'm ignoring the game that should have not been on this list and is the obvious worst choice because of repeated gameplay, a shallow narrative that disrespects the people who actually fucking cared about it, and is also representative of everything that I find wrong about modern Sony. Like, again, like, don't get me wrong, I love, and I do mean I love my Sony consoles. I mean, just look at my PlayStation 2 and 3, like, collection right there. Like, there's some gems on there that I'm very proud that I was able to not only, like, get, but also keep. So, I am a huge, like, the PlayStation is my console. Like, it was the console I grew up with my entire life. But Last of Us Part 2, and frankly other games like the newer Spider-Man games and the Horizon games, they represent everything that I just really dislike about Sony's modern, just sort of, gaming business practices. And where basically everything has to be, a huge narrative-driven linear experience. Granted, I know technically this game's an open world, like Miles Morales is an open world game, but it still kind of follows that same formula. And also they're just relying on IPs that are, to be fair, newer for them, but are also IPs that get milked. And we've been seeing that a lot with The Last of Us. With this game, the absolutely unnecessary remake of the first game. I still stand by that, by the way. I'm never going to change my mind on that. And then the TV show, and then them remastering this game, which, I mean, they remastered the first game like a year afterwards, but it's like, I'm getting fucking sick and tired of fucking Last of Us. I'm a huge, like, Sony person, but I'm frankly getting fucking sick and tired of it, because I don't like zombie media. Like, yeah, I know, like, there's some exceptions to that rule, like Resident Evil and shit, but, like, frankly, I don't like I don't like media that is just, a pure zombie apocalypse. Like, that's just not really my vibe. Second of all, the story in this game is absolute fucking shit. Like, as someone who's actually taking a film writing class, this game fails all the checkboxes on how you write a compelling narrative. Like, this game is actually offensively bad as far as that goes. And on top of all that, it represents, like I said, everything that I despise about what Sony has been doing with their fucking consoles in the past, like, 5 to 10 years. Like, where the fuck are, like, the new IPs? I mean, to be fair, Ghost of Tsushima is a new IP, or it's a new game. I don't know if it's a full-on new IP. It might just be a solo, it just might be a standalone game. But, like, where are the new IPs? Or, how about this? Where are your IPs that just straight up haven't had a new game in, like, 10, 15, 20 years? Like, where's the new Twisted Metal? Where's the new Jak and Daxter game? Like, where's the new Ape Escape? I mean, where's the new Sly Cooper game? Like, people have been asking it for a fucking decade. Longer than between the previous game and the newest game. Like, this is the shit that fucking pisses me off about Sony, is that they're literally not listening to any feedback from anyone, and they're tripling down on their stupid fucking dumb, corporate decisions. And this game represents everything that's wrong with Sony right now. But why am I ranting about this game? Why am I giving this game so much shit? It's because this game won a shit ton of awards, including this one. This right here is literally the worst choice for this entire fucking thing. Again, it's Hoodie-itis again. This whole, which by the way, get used to me saying that throughout this entire stream, because like this is an example of the type of fucking bullshit that I despise when it comes to award ceremony shows. They basically award literally the worst fucking shit. So, and before anyone fucking says this, no. I made a whole rant about this last time, actually. I'm not hating the game because, the characters are female. That's not the case. As a matter of fact, if you genuinely think that, you are a sexist loser and you don't fucking deserve to be anywhere near me or any of the shit that I make. Like, if you are like a genuine if you are someone who is complaining about this game because it's woke, it's an SJW propaganda, you're a fucking moron. I'm just gonna be frank. At the same time, though, the people in charge of getting this game pushed out the door, they're also fucking morons. Like, because this game sucks. I'm just gonna be frank. The story sucks, and again, the gameplay isn't even that different from the first game. Or shit, even like Uncharted, because Naughty Dog has been basically making, they've been using the base of their gameplay formula since Uncharted 2, and they haven't really changed too much from it. Granted, I like Uncharted. I actually think Uncharted is one of the best examples of how Sony's it's one of the better Sony exclusives. Although it was a double-edged sword, because that was the beginning of whenever Sony was starting to push for more of those types of games. And, well, truth be told, here. So yeah, no, fuck this choice. And this is absolutely the fucking worst out of all of these. Even though I don't care, even Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a better choice. Yeah, that game is way too long, but at least it has the amount of content that's worth a damn. This game doesn't. So yeah, what would be the nominees for me? So, admittedly, this was kind of a tough one, but I ended up choosing Ori in Ghost of Tsushima out of the ones that were listed on the original, but then I've also added in Raji and Ghost Runner on here. And then I also threw a bone for Nintendo because Nintendo didn't actually release too much of anything that interested me in 2020. But they did release Hyrule Warriors Age Calamity, which is a Dynasty Warriors style game, but set in the Legend of Zelda universe. And, well, truth be told, from what I can tell, most people think that this is better than the first game in that sub-series. So, and I think it looks cool. Granted, I don't own a Switch, so I can't really, say I have too much experience with this game. But as far as Warriors games are concerned, as far as Legend of Zelda spin-offs are concerned, this game, I wanted to give Nintendo at least a little bit of a nudge. So, if that makes sense. God, that rant. I'm sorry. I fucking despise shit like Last of Us for what it represents. But anyways, what's the game that I would have chosen? It should be pretty obvious, but I'm going to do my bit anyways. So, the best action-adventure game for 2020 award goes to Ghost of Tsushima. So, what's the difference between this game and The Last of Us Part 2? You're probably wondering. Because they're both Sony exclusives. And, well, they came out around that same time. Well, here's the difference. Number one, this is a new IP. So, or like a new thing. They aren't just trying to straight up milk a franchise. Which I know I mentioned, they're not touching their old, legacy franchises. But the difference between... But here's the thing, is that they're milking, a franchise... Sony basically just plays favorites. That's basically how it turned... That's basically what it boils down to. So, to see that Sucker Punch was able to make a new sort of story and do it really damn well is commendable. And also considering that this game... It plays less like a lot of the newer Sony exclusives that have been coming out, and it kind of plays in a similar way, funny enough, to an Assassin's Creed game, but a bit more, I guess, grounded. You aren't, yeah, there are some, stealth stuff that you do in the game, but, that's not the main focus. This one's just a fun exploration game. It's not really... exploration, action-adventure, I should say. This game has a very expansive open world, but unlike Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it's not bloated. It has, just the right amount of content that you want for a game like this. And as far as the combat and, side activities go, again, it takes a lot of cues from the newer Assassin's Creed games as far as combat goes. You can tell that Sucker Punch did their research. They took the best aspects from their old franchise, Sly Cooper, and a little bit of Infamous, but not too much, since that one's definitely more of a, high fantastical, superhero game. They took their best aspects from their old Sly Cooper games, and then mixed it with Assassin's Creed, and basically made... honestly, Sony's best exclusive in the past 10 years, if I'm going to be honest. If I'm going to be frank, this is probably the best game to release by Sony in the entirety of the 8th gen console. Throughout the entire, life cycle of PlayStation 4. If I'm going to be truthfully honest. This right here, in my opinion, is the exception of what they've been doing in recent years. And I appreciate that they've took the chance and it succeeded. So, and also, of course, this game also looks amazing. The attention to detail is so damn good, especially since this game, it takes place in feudal Japan during the Mongol invasion of Japan. Well, the failed attempt of the Mongol invasion of Japan, but like you get the point. Is like this game is pretty cool, and I highly recommend you guys check it out, especially if you guys want a game that is admittedly kind of similar to a game like Shakiro, but not as hard. If I'm just gonna be blunt. Yeah, it's basically if like Shakiro was more grounded and not as hard. So, but yeah, like that's my take. This is the game that should have won easily, but it didn't because the Game Awards is just an echo chamber of idiots. So, well, speaking of Shakiro, best RPG. So, what were the nominees that were given from the Game Awards? Not very good choices, if I'm going to be honest. Not as bad as other years, but especially with the power of hindsight, as well as the fact that, like, a lot of these are either, two of these are re-releases, one of them is just straight up a bad game, and then one of these games just got absolutely disrespected. This is kind of a lame-mo list, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, as far as the games, I definitely do agree with being on here. Yakuza Like a Dragon and Wasteland 3 absolutely deserve being on here. Yakuza Like a Dragon came out actually very early in the year, January 16th. So this is one of the earliest games that actually qualifies. And it was one of the first games to come out with a fucking bang for 2020. Like, this game is just a fun game. Like, Yakuza is just one of those games where it's like, yeah, you can take it seriously. And this game does take itself seriously, but like, it's one of those games where it doesn't need... a lot of Yakuza games, get real with themselves, as in, like, they take themselves very seriously. This game's like... we don't need to take ourselves fucking seriously all the damn time. Let's just have some fun. And that's exactly what this game is. And, I respect that, especially for a long-running franchise that is pretty well known for being very serious as far as its storyline. A lot of the side activities, they fuck around, but like, as far as the main story, it's actually a very serious in tone, like, main storyline throughout most of the Yakuza games, except for something like Yakuza 0, but even then. So yeah, no, I definitely agree with this game being on here. Also, Wasteland 3, a long-awaited sequel for about, like, I think, like, almost 30 years. Because this game actually, for those who don't know, Wasteland, like, the old Wasteland games, the first one came out in 1987. And then the second game, I think, came out around, like, 1990 or, like, 91. So, yeah, this is a long-awaited sequel. And actually, funny enough, this was the main series that heavily inspired the Fallout series. So, yeah, this is definitely more of a over-the-top sort of game. And I think it's actually pretty cool. It's definitely a way more interesting environment for me personally, because again, you guys know how much I hate the retrofuturism of shit like Fallout. So I just hate that sort of aesthetic. So to see a game that is a post-apocalyptic game, but it's just kind of more modernized post-apocalypse, I appreciate. So that's why I do think that this should be nominated. Everything else, no. Persona 5 Royal, that it is a literal re-release from. This is also from 2019. Okay, why are they nominating a lot of games from 2019? Okay, well, this isn't even technically a game from 2019. It's a game from 2016. So it makes even less sense. So I know, again, it's a re-release it's basically just a definitive edition of Persona 5. So like I don't know why this is nominated for this. Like that's again the fucking Game Awards this year. I don't fucking know. I have no idea. I genuinely have no idea what the hell they were thinking. I mean, this one, okay, the next game, Final Fantasy VII Remake, it makes a little bit more sense because a lot of people were very excited about this because Final Fantasy VII is considered by many to be one of the best games of all time, so that makes sense. But again, I wouldn't personally nominate it because it's a remake. Like, it's not a completely original game. So, it's a really damn good remake, and once we get to the nominees, it's definitely going to be nominated as, spoiler alert, will be a nominee for Best Remake / Remaster. But yeah, as far as like that goes, yeah, no, I don't agree with it on here. It's more of a disrespectfully just because of the principle of it. And then, well, we've got Genshin Impact, which this is another game that I am just kind of frankly sick and tired of fucking seeing all the fucking time. Like, I don't know. A lot of games from like the late 2010s and 2020, there's just a lot of games that were fucking everywhere. And you know what's worse about this game especially? This came out on my fucking birthday. That's the worst feeling, by the way, when like a piece of media that you absolutely just either do not care for or just actually hate comes out on your birthday. It's just a big middle finger to you. That's basically what it is. So I guess this was sort of the fucking middle finger to me for that fucking birthday, but that's a whole other story. But anyways, this game is, I mean, a million other people have talked about why Genshin Impact should not be, like, you know, highly praised. It mostly stems from the fact that, yes, a lot of it is, like, you know, free to play, but the game is also, it has a very similar problem to a lot of Ubisoft games, where it's purposely, the game itself is purposely very grindy. And all it does is just incentivize people to just buy a lot of the time savers, which is a thing that I do not fucking vibe with at all. So yeah, and also it doesn't help that the company that is associated with this is a very sketchy company that's tied to, I'm pretty sure like the company that owns this game is owned by Tencent, and we can go on a million reasons as to why Tencent is pretty fucking sketchy. But you get the point, is I do not agree with this game being on here because, again, it's another game that represents everything that I do not like about modern gaming. So, yeah, again, it may be free to play, but it's only free to play if you're willing to, like, you know, sell your soul to it. So, that's how they fucking get you. Which, by the way, what was the game that fucking won this? Okay, Final Fantasy VII Remake won. Again, I don't agree with it, mostly because it's a remake. So, but these are the games I would nominate as far as role-playing games. So, because Like a Dragon's on here and Wasteland 3 is on here. Also, I'm surprised that Hades was not nominated. Like, what the fuck? This game is an RPG. You level up, and you like progress through the game, and you have a ton of stats. It's an RPG. Like, I don't know why this game wasn't nominated. It was nominated for the other categories, but it wasn't nominated for this. So yeah, this was a weird, out of left field, like, just absolutely just, like, they just did not nominate it. Honestly, they should have not nominated Persona 5, and they should have put this on the list. That would have made way more sense. So, and then as far as the other game, I'm gonna nominate Neo 2. So, basically, I guess pre-Shakiro, but whatever. So yeah, like, this game, I've played the original Neo. I think it's pretty cool. It's another Souls-like game, so it is a very fucking hard game, but I think it's a pretty cool experience, especially with a lot of the enemy design. The enemy designs are very interesting to look at. Like, damn, they have a very. I mean, it's a very obviously, it's a very Japanese. Like, it's set in Japan, so it makes sense as to why it has that aesthetic. But yeah, no, this game is pretty cool, and I highly recommend it. Especially if you are someone who is interested in other Souls-like games. But let's get into the winner. So, I'm just gonna fucking do it. The best RPG for 2020, in my opinion, at least, is Yakuza Like a Dragon. So, yeah, no. This game, honestly, this and Wasteland 3 absolutely got snubbed. But I think I give the nod slightly to Yakuza, because again, this game came out very early on in the year, and it just was a non-stop roller coaster, like just bam, 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 bam. This is an example of a game that just does not stop, but in a very good way. And considering that this game, it has some of the familiar cast, but it is a very new cast as well. Like, they are very welcome. And like I said, the fact that this game is way more laid back compared to most other Yakuza games, it just makes it a way more fun time overall. Like, it's a game that doesn't take itself entirely seriously. And that's why a lot of people, especially people who are closer to my age, appreciate it more, because, sometimes you just want a game that just isn't just too real. So, and also the many different side activities and missions that are in the game. Obviously, it's that is a staple of the Yakuza games in general, but like, especially with this game, of course, I had to bow down to this. Again, I would definitely say that all the other games are worthy for being best RPG, but if I had to choose one, I would say Yakuza. So, Hades, I probably would have chosen, but again, I'm not as big into roguelikes as much. So, that's why I'm going to choose Yakuza Like a Dragon. Alright, best shooter game. So, I think I have a bit of a confession to make about 2020. This was if I'm going to be honest, 2020 was a pretty rough year for shooter games. Obviously, the big notable names got a ton of recognition. But, yeah, no, this was kind of a quiet year as far as shooter games go. Like, okay, I don't want to say it was awful though, but it was just kind of hard to find just anything that was remotely interesting. So, or at least enough. But I ended up choosing 4 games. One of which I'm admittedly I'm still, even right now, mixed as to, like, if it's the right choice. I don't know. This year was just it was kind of a dull year for shooter games, like, for both third and first person shooters, if I'm going to be frank. Like, this was just not it, chief. Because a lot of it was just either stuff I've never heard of, or just games that were just absolute shit. So, like, yeah, this was not a great year for either first-person shooter or third-person shooters. But like I said, I ended up choosing 4. Once you see the list, it's going to be pretty obvious which one's going to win. So, like, I'm not even going to waste time with you guys on this one, but I just want to let you know that yeah, this was a pretty not a pretty
It's not good.
yeah, this was a pretty not good year for shooter games. But yeah, let's just go over the list. Yeah, again, if I have to nominate a Call of Duty game on here, which to be fair, I actually like Cold War, to be fair. But if I have to nominate a Call of Duty game begrudgingly, you know this was a pretty weak year. So, but let's go over that, actually. Black Ops Cold War. I know a lot of people gave shit, rightfully so, when it came out. Because, although, actually, I will say this. I actually really liked its campaign. Because I played the campaign when this game first came out. And I streamed it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It has its problems, of course, like with every single, Call of Duty campaign. But at the end of the day, it was a thoroughly fun ride to do. And I liked how they brought back multiple endings and they brought back side missions, which is something that admittedly Call of Duty has been lacking for way too long. So it was a breath of fresh air in that department. And then as for zombies, yeah, it only came out with one map. Okay, well, it came out with this and then Dead Ops 3. Dead Ops 3 is fine, but D Machine I find to be a very enjoyable and fun map to play. Like, it is definitely one of those maps that, yes, it is a remake of Nocturne Toten, but like they remade it in a way that it plays completely differently, and you can still have fun time regardless. And so I approve of D Machine. Where were all the maps in multiplayer? Yeah, that gets us into our big problem. This game launched with only 8 maps for multiplayer in total. That's a big fucking L. That's the least amount of maps that Call of Duty has come out with just ever. Even less than COD World War II. That is pretty sad. Like, I mean, to be fair, it did come out with a couple of ground war maps, or the equivalent of ground war that's in Black Ops, and it did release Nuketown within, I think, the first week or so of the game. So it wasn't like a complete failure. And to be fair, the game has gotten significantly better. I think that the addition of the newer zombie maps, as well as all the multiplayer maps, has definitely made this into, frankly, what Black Ops 3 and 4 should have been, if I'm going to be honest. Like, because you got, again, I've talked shit about Black Ops 3 outside of zombies so many fucking times, and I've soured my opinion on BO4 so much. Truth be told, this is what Black Ops 3 should have been, as far as like the multiplayer and the campaign is concerned. So I'm very glad that they made this game. It just kind of sucks that this is kind of one of the more divided games. So, Deep Rock Collective is getting nominated for this category. I've already explained exactly why. But interestingly enough, our first VR game I'm actually nominating. Again, we aren't nominating VR as their own category, but we're making an exception. Especially, like, I don't usually nominate VR games because I just feel like a lot of them are just kind of they just aren't there, as far as like thing. But this is an exception. Half-Life Alyx. Again, yes, I know a lot of people know that, like, I think that Half-Life 1 is hella overrated, which I'm actually gonna talk about that in a little bit. A little bit, probably in like another hour and a half. But as far as like this game goes, yeah, no, this is what VR games should strive to be. This game set the gold standard for what people want out of like virtual reality. They want immersive compelling narrative/shooting experiences that last as long as any other game. I don't know why VR games just feel super gimmicky. Like 90% of VR games, at least for me, like they aren't like they feel like they're just doing the VR thing as like a gimmick. But this is one of those games where it takes advantage of it being a VR game, and I appreciate that. So, granted, I don't own a VR myself, unfortunately, though my friends do, and I played a little bit of this back in 2020, and yeah, no, this game was pretty cool, and I do recommend you guys check it out. So, especially if you want like a little bit of a story that filled in between the events of Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. It's a good, like, narrative, like, filler. And then last but not least, we got Doom Eternal, which, I mean, it's Doom Eternal, the sequel to the amazing 2016 game. And, I mean, I've already praised this game plenty of times before. Granted, I'm not someone who thinks that this is the best Doom game ever, period. Because I know there's some people who are diehards when it comes to like defending Doom Eternal. I respect this game a lot. Is it the best Doom game? I don't agree with that entirely, but I do agree that this game is phenomenal. But let's get over into this. So, it should be pretty obvious which one's going to win, but I'm just going to do my bit anyways. The best shooter game of 2020. Doom Eternal. I know what I just said, it not being the best Doom game, but that doesn't mean that it's not deserving of the win. It is very deserving of the win. It is a fantastic continuation of, the modern Doom systems that we've had. And the new weapons and enemies are also very welcome. The added collectibles that they added, like a lot of the plushies that they added in the game, as well as a lot of the in-game unlockables for the multiplayer, those are pretty cool to see. And truth be told, like, I know some people like to call this a remake of Doom 2. It's really not, like, at all. It's a completely new game. It just follows similar story beats to Doom 2 in the sense that this game mostly takes place on Earth. But this game does raise the bar, and it raises the stakes as far as this universe is concerned. And the fact that you actually get to go to heaven for the first time, that's pretty cool. So, because, you never see heaven in, like, Doom, like, at all. So, and again, we've already talked, like, again, you get the point. Doom Eternal, I do think it is easily one of the best games of 2020. And, I mean, what else can I say? Like, what else? I don't know what else to say other than what other people said about this game. Like, this is a worthy sequel to an already amazing game. And if they do end up releasing a new Doom game, probably not this year, but probably at some point next year in 2025, I'm all for it. Although because of the ending with the Ancient Gods DLCs, I'm not too... I don't know if that's going to be entirely possible, but I'm excited nonetheless. So, let's just hope Bethesda doesn't fuck anything up. I know technically Microsoft owns, but whatever. Alright. Best Sim/strategy game. This year was a okay year for sim and strategy games. Dare I say that this was actually a pretty good year for sim and strategy games. I mean, way fucking better than 2021 would become, unfortunately. But let's go over what was nominated at the Game Awards. Honestly? Oh, damn. Okay, whatever. I'll just show it. honestly a pretty good nominee section. Microsoft Flight Simulator was nominated this year, and it won. That seemed clear, so I didn't mean to click that, but which only makes the nominee for 2021 even weirder. It's like you nominated it for 2020 and it won, and then you nominated it again for 2020. Why? Like, just why? I don't know. But yeah, no, I actually, if I'm gonna be honest, for actually all these games, if you were to have chosen any of these games as best sim/strategy, I would not give you shit for it. This is like the only category that, like, I do agree that these should be on here. I'd say the weakest one is probably XCOM Chimera Squad, but that's only because, frankly, a lot of XCOM fans hate Chimera Squad. I don't entirely like that sentiment. I think a lot of people don't like it. I think a lot of it stems from the fact that, like, this is the first XCOM game where you actually get to control. Okay, it comes from two things. Number one, this is the first XCOM game that allows you to control some aliens in the actual campaign. That just wasn't a thing. And then also, like, the lighter tone of this game, lighter, but like just kind of a more optimistic tone. That is not something that a lot of people liked, especially when you compare it to the honestly downright creepy vibe that a lot of other XCOM games had, both the original series from the 90s and the reboot series. So I guess I can agree in that aspect, but I wouldn't say that that is like entirely a reason to knock the whole game entirely. I don't know, that it just kind of reads what I mentioned before with people just bashing this game just because of some, like, stupid, like, political bullshit nonsense thing. I don't fucking know. As far as the other games go, Gears Tactics, another fair choice. It's an XCOM style game, which is funny because it's going up against an actual XCOM game. And yeah, no, as far as like Gears of War spin-offs go, this game's actually pretty cool. So I easily see why this game was nominated. So yeah. Desperados 3 as well. Another series similar to Wasteland, where this was kind of a long-awaited sequel. This game's also another XCOM-esque game, except this is a Wild West game. And I mean, it looks pretty cool. And especially considering that, like, from what I heard, Desperados 2 was really bad. So to see that, a sequel came out, fixed the issues of that old game, of the original, of the first sequel, and then just make it even better than even the original, that's always heartwarming to see, is when not only a sequel is able to improve on the previous game, but even just the original. That's always, that to me is a true sign of like a series that sees improvement. So yeah, and of course Microsoft Flight Simulator, again, it shouldn't have been nominated twice, but I actually agree with this being on here because, again, this game, like I mentioned last time, this game is a technologically impressive game as far as just games are in general, because this game has such a, like, it takes, like, it has like a geomap thing where basically it takes pictures that were from, like, something like Google Maps, and it basically retranslates it into the game itself. So this is actually a 1-to-1 scale of Earth that you're flying around in. And it looks so cool. Like, it's obviously upscaled so that it looks way better. You may have some fracturing because it is using Google Maps, that tends to happen. But this is still a very impressive game on a technical scale, and I think that someone should at least check this game out once. Do not buy the DLC, though. The DLC is way too fucking expensive. And then last but not least, we got Crusader Kings 3, which is another Paradox game. So if you know, you know. So it's going to be very similar to any other Paradox game, you know, like Victoria, Hearts of Iron, Stellaris, you know the whole, song and dance on that one. But what about the nominees for me personally? Honestly, the only thing I would change is I would play it a bit safe and remove the XCOM Chimera Squad, but as an honorable mention. But I would replace it with Airborne Kingdom, because I already mentioned how much I loved that game, or at least I loved the aesthetics of that game, and I think it's pretty cool. But also, I would definitely add in Star Wars Squadrons on here. The fact that this game has a low as shit rating on Metacritic is actually kind of sad. And I know exactly why it has a fucking low score too. I've checked the reviews. It's the same thing that happened with Humankind. Where people were dogpiling on this game for just basically just blatant racism and sexism. I'm just going to be straight up honest about it. Like, again, if you are someone who is upset that you are playing as like a woman, and also if you're someone who is upset that there's not a single white person in a fucking space science fiction game, I'm sorry, but you're just a fucking like loser. You're just a piece of shit. Like, you're just an asshole. Like, again, this game, I actually do own this game, and I played a little bit of this. Holy shit, this game is so fucking cool. And the fact that this was another game similar to Jedi Fallen Order that was under the direct orders of EA, but it's this damn good, it's actually shocking. Because this is one of the most immersive Star Wars games that anyone would be able to play. Like, this game, and it doesn't just do that, it also has a really compelling multiplayer with it. And truth be told, I think that people give this game way too much fucking shit, especially since this is not a AAA game. It is a AA game. People expect, every Star Wars game, is like, has like is a big experience, and this one's not. That shouldn't always be the case. There can be Star Wars games that can be smaller, like budget, and can still be amazing. I mean, for fuck's sake, look at the old Battlefront games, for example. Those games are technically not AAA games. Those are AA games. And yet, they are beloved by millions of people, including myself. So, to see a game that has a similar budget to the older Battlefront games, and to be given so much shit, just because... Which, I mean, to be fair, the story is kind of crap. That is the one thing that is holding it down, but it's not because the fucking person on it is a woman. If you genuinely think that, then like you're a fucking bigot. Like, I'm just gonna be blatantly honest with you. So, like, but like that's all you need to change. Just change the narrative, change the story, and then you got yourself a fucking 9 out of 10 game. So, but let's get into the reviews. And people are going to give me shit for this one, but I don't fucking care. It's my show. Fuck you. The best sim/strategy game of 2020 goes to fucking Star Wars Squadrons. Again, the fact that this game has a low rating from users is actually fucking pathetic and sad. And again, is proof that you should not trust user reviews. Like, but because this game is honestly one of the better Star Wars games to come out in recent years. Like, dare I'd say it's honestly as good as Jedi Fallen Order. Like, these are the types of Star Wars games that people want. EA, or I know they don't have the exclusive license anymore. Now there's a bunch of other companies that like have the license to it. But you get the point. Is Star Wars should be something that has a lot of effort and passion put into it. And this game has that. And also, again, this game is one of the most immersive games that anyone could play. Even if you're not a huge Star Wars fan, I would still recommend it, especially since combat flight sims like this are just not a thing anymore. Like, they just kind of died out after, like, the... I mean, if I'm going to be honest, the last notable, like, flight sim game that's kind of like this that I can think of that came out is honestly the Tom Clancy Hawks games from, like, 09 and 010. There just hasn't been a game like... I mean, I guess there were some IL Sturmovik games that came out, but, like, that's it. Like, these types of, like, games just are not that common anymore, which is pretty sad. Because these games are so cool, and I definitely do see a modern market for it. I mean, clearly this game was so good that they actually released free DLC for the game, and they didn't even plan it. Like, they literally gave it out because they were so impressed with just... Because this game actually exceeded expectations. So... But yeah, like, this game is highly immersive. The combat is really fun. Again, this game is, frankly, one of the most beautiful Star Wars games. We've been getting a lot of amazing looking Star Wars games as of late, but, like, this one especially is so good looking. And guess what? This game is also compatible not only with VR, but also with flight stick controllers. So, and which makes this, at least from what I can tell, the only flight sim game that is compatible with both virtual reality and with, like, realistic, like, old flight stick controllers from, like, the fucking early 2000s or something. That is awesome. Like, I cannot wait to play this game like that. Once I get my new computer, and hopefully I'll be able to get, like, a VR headset, I want to play this game like that. I've already played the game regularly, and I already thought the game was pretty amazing, but I want to experience that myself. Especially since, like I said, a lot of VR games tend to be pretty shallow anyways. So, I really, 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 really want to play this game like that. Holy shit. So, yeah, that's my nomination for the best simulation/strategy game. Obviously, more of a sim than a strategy game, but sim nonetheless. Alright. Best multiplayer game. So, I'll try to make these a little bit faster because I'm noticing the time. Unfortunately, this is going to be yet another year where I just do not like anything that was nominated. I'm sorry. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I don't like a lot of the multiplayer games that get popular. But, like, this year especially was a pretty bad one. Though, to be fair, there is one on here where it's more of a respectable disagree than everything else. But once you see this list, it's gonna ease, like, it will make more sense. It made more sense at the time. But let's go over it. God fucking damn it. Yeah, no. Suffice to say, I actually hate 3 out of the 5 games that are on this screen. And then one of which, like, I just straight up disagree with. and then the other one I just respectively disagree. If I'm going to be honest, the only one that I respectively disagree, although to be fair, that's mostly because I'm just not really like familiar as much in the series anyways, is Animal Crossing New Horizons. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't look like it's a bad game. It just doesn't really appeal to me. You know what I mean? It's more so I feel like this game is just more of a, again, it's more like it's a more chillaxed game, but it's not like Yakuza like a dragon chill. It's more family friendly chill, which there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not really my thing, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, no, this one is the only one that I respectively disagree with. Excuse me, fuck. As far as Call of Duty Warzone goes, yeah, no, I heavily disagree with this one. I mean, again, you already know I hate Battle Royale personally. Like, I've always hated playing like BR games. But also, this game, even when it was released, had massive problems with cheaters. Like, Call of Duty was already a franchise that was notorious for cheaters. Like, it was just an unfortunate reality for, like, many years. But what game is representative of, like, the culmination of the problems with cheaters in Call of Duty, where people were able to hack into the engine and just straight up do all the bullshit that people typically see. Like, basically cheaters ruined this game. And they're ruining Warzone 2.0 as well. Meaning, you can't really play this game like it is intended. Making this just kind of by default not really worth it. Like, it definitely, because of that, yes, Warzone definitely took the world by storm, and thank God it actually somewhat killed Fortnite. But, like, I don't know, man. I'm sorry. I just don't like BR. So I can't nominate it. As for the other games, fuck no. I already ranted about how Fall Guys should not be on this fucking list. Valorant shouldn't be on here either, because this game, it's not even an original. It's one of those games where it's like, it feels less inspired and just feels more like ripping off. Like, it just feels like one of those games that's just more of a, like, it just feels like it's ripping off everything. Specifically Overwatch and CSGO. Like, that's definitely, like, this big games that this game was trying so hard to be. But unlike something like Rogue Company, where, at least in my opinion, it kind of did its own thing, this game was really, really wanting to be CSGO Overwatch so badly. It also doesn't help that this game was made by Riot Games, aka the company who also made League of Legends, aka the company where they literally have a CEO, like, harassing everyone and, like, doing disgusting things with them. So that's always fun. So yeah, I don't like Valorant, as you can probably tell, because this game is like, this game also only launched with 4 maps. Like,
What?
yeah, 4. You heard me. 4 maps in total. 4. And this game, is this game on Steam now? Like, I don't think, like, this game first didn't come out on Steam. Like, you had to use like a separate client, which made it very suspicious. Oh, it's not even on Steam. Oh yeah, like, you have to use like a separate client. I don't even think you use the Epic Store client for this. You have to use like a third-party one. So yeah, that was already kind of sketchy. But the worst part about this game is the stupid prices on all their fucking weapon skins. Like, Jesus Christ. You thought CSGO was bad? This game, like, it basically makes CSGO look like Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading. Like, it makes it look like fucking, cheap-ass Pokemon cards in comparison. Because, like, literally, this game store is way too fucking expensive. And because of that, I cannot agree with this game, being on here. Because this game, like, this game is basically a scam. So, fuck no. So yeah, fuck Overwatch. Yeah, okay, fuck Overwatch, but that's for another time. Fuck Valorant. Fuck Fall Guys. And, well, I'm starting to already get PTSD for the next game. Because this game is, I'm okay. People are gonna fucking hate me for saying this. I've got a confession. I fucking hate Among Us, man. Like, I really fucking do. I hate the art style. I hate the type of game that it is because it's basically just a ripoff of fucking oh no, he's crying again. But sorry, but anyways, it's basically just a ripoff of Gmod Murder, just in a separate game. Which, I mean, to be fair, I don't usually play a lot of like secondary game modes in Gmod anyways. I'm more of a sandbox player anyways, but it's like, man, I hate the art style. The memes got fucking overdone, and I'm sorry. This is just a game that I just fucking hate. It's one of those games that got It's just one of those games that got super fucking popular, and because it got super popular, no one would shut the fuck up about, and it actually drove me insane to where it made me want to fucking punch someone. Like, for real. So, like, because there's only like a certain amount of times when I can tolerate someone gushing about like a fucking like game that I don't like for so long. So, like, I'm sorry, but I fucking hate this game. Like, I think that like it represents everything I fucking hate about like, what a lot of people fucking like about games. Like, I'm sorry. And if you don't like that, then you can piss off. I fucking hate this game. So, and what's even worse is that it was the winner. Which, by the way, may I remind you as well that this game shouldn't have even been qualified for this list. This game didn't come out in 2020. It came out in 2018. And this wasn't a case where it was an early access back in 2018. No, it was fully released in 2018. It just only blew up in 2020. So, which makes it even more annoying because, like, this was okay, which, I mean, I don't want to feel like I'm shitting on the developers. Like, obviously, the developers themselves, were pretty, like, at first at least, I'll get into it in a little bit. They were pretty happy with the success that they were able to get with this game, because it's kind of similar to what happened with Rainbow Six Siege, where it was just a bit of a sleeper hit. It took a couple of years for people to get interested in it before it blew up into this thing. Here's the problem. And this is something that not a lot of people like to talk about, but I'm going to bring it up. Though I am going to make sure that I double check to make sure that, like, I'm getting my facts right. yeah, I've got a bit of a fucking thing to tell you guys. The developers started to resent the game themselves. So this game just blew up way too fast. And, well, truth be told, this game died. Right, good, by the way, because, again, I've always fucking hated the art style, and I've always thought that this game was just annoying on the internet. So, it's not the worst example, but it's easily one game that got under my fucking skin. So, but yeah, no, like, this game, it won best multiplayer game, but again, keep in mind, it made more sense at the time. Granted, I don't necessarily know how people feel about the games now, like the game now, or if anyone really gives a shit anymore. But truth be told, I just please don't fucking shove it down my goddamn throat. I swear to God. Again, that's when it drives me insane. When something gets shoved down my throat, when everyone fucking talks about it, especially if it's something I already don't like. As someone who loves a lot of shit that never gets talked about, but then shit like this gets gushed about all the fucking time, it gets annoying. And it actually kind of makes me want to do things I would probably regret doing. But you get the point. This game is fucking dog shit, and I frankly am glad that this game eventually fucking died. And thankfully, we are going to rectify the best multiplayer game. So, what did I choose? Games we've already talked about. So, Deep Rock, Risk of Rain, Wasteland 3, Crusader Kings, and Hyrule Warriors. I'm not going to go over my reasons why, as I've already explained, so I just kind of want to get this over with. So, the best multiplayer game of 2020? Deep Rock Galactic. So... Among Us was a fad and a trend that ultimately proved that people should not overhype their fucking games. Deep Rock Galactic is an example of a game that was able to stand the test of time, and people still love it to this day. That is why this game is the game that deserves best multiplayer game. So, and also it didn't like spew a toxic as fuck community. Jesus fucking Christ. So, but of course, active community, but also like I mentioned before, it's very progression heavy. There's tons of customization, and there's a difficulty slider for it. So if you want it to be relaxing, you can make it that, or if you want to increase the difficulty, you can do that as well. So like at the end of the day, this is a game that is timeless. So, again, I know I'm going to get a lot of fucking hate for what I just said, and I'm probably going to even get a few comments from a few of my friends as they basically milked Among Us. I'm not trying to be mean when I say that, by the way, but like they did play that game a lot. But like as someone who always fucking hated the game, yeah, and well, it died, so it paid the price. So it was just a fad and a trend. Let's just wait until fucking... Okay, Lethal Company is not the same fucking thing. At least the game looks interesting to me, so it's not going to be that. But anyways, let's move on from this point, because I'm already kind of depressed, especially since I know what's coming up like in a few more slides. So, but let's take a break from that. Let's talk about best DLC and expansion. So these are the ones I ended up choosing. So I don't know. I do my research on like what a lot of people generally find to be the best expansions or DLC, but a lot of them are just kind of choices from games that like either I don't particularly care for, or it just doesn't feel right. But I ended up choosing these as the main ones that I ended up doing. So, first one we got is Metro Exodus Sam's Story, which is a story DLC where it follows one of the characters, Sam, a side character of the main game, but this is kind of a continuation following his perspective of things. And it's actually pretty compelling, I would say. Like, as far as things are, like, as far as like a narrative is concerned, as well as just adding a ton of new content to it, it feels more like a proper expansion rather than it just being, you know, a DLC that they just threw at. So, and if you wanted a bit more lore depth for the Metro series, I would definitely recommend it, especially since Metro, shit like Metro and Stalker, I'm just way more interested in as far as, like, post-apocalyptic games are concerned. Although Stalker's not really an apocalyptic game, but, like, it's a lot of the same developers. But, yeah. And then we got 2 Point Hospital with its DLC, Off the Grid. So this is kind of a more... Yeah, I actually haven't talked about 2 Point Hospital too much. Hell, I'm surprised I haven't streamed this game yet, but maybe in the future. But as far as, like, expansions go, this one is more of a ecological based one. There's 2 new hospital locations, and there's, some new diseases, like some new, like, diseases that are kind of like plant themed, and there's a lot of, like, new items and stuff. Like, it's a worthy expansion for an already really good game. So I would recommend you guys check this one out. And then we have Control, which this was kind of hard to choose, because Control is one of those games that, I mean, it's a Remedy game, so it's going to be very narrative heavy. But this game had 2 major expansions. It had the Foundation, and then it had Awe. I ultimately chose the Foundation because this one is the more challenging of the 2, but this one is kind of more following up on the events of Control and kind of fleshing things out a little bit more. So at the end of the day, I do think that this is a though, I don't know. Basically, you can definitely convince me on whether or not either DLC is a better option. But I just chose the Foundation, excuse me, as the one to represent this list, as I think that extra challenge adds more, like, to that a little bit. And then we got Gears of War 5 Hive Busters, which, I mean, yeah, it's another, like, sort of, it's a short mini campaign sort of thing. Adds a few new weapons. So, and as someone who has been getting into Gears of War lately, I might even stream it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like, I think this is definitely, like, a cool continuation for what they were doing with Gears 5. I know people have issues with the newer Gears of War games, but it's not as bad of a situation as with the Halo games. So that's kind of how I'm taking it. But let's get into the thing here. So, best DLC and expansion. The award for the best DLC of 2020 goes to Metro Exodus Sam's Story. So, wow, I spelled that wrong. Damn it. Okay, whatever, it's fine. But anyways, I mean, it should be pretty obvious as to why I chose this one. This one, like, honestly, it is between this one and Control, but I ultimately chose Metro because, I mean, first of all, this one is just 1 DLC as opposed to 2, which I would have felt like it would have been a bit unfair. But also, this game continues on just the amazing gameplay that was with Metro Exodus, especially since that game raised the bar quite a bit for Metro as a series, and it just follows the side character. Like it expands on these characters that you are interacting with, but you get to play as, which I think is pretty cool. And the new weapons and the new collectible items, they're always welcome. So at the end of the day, I'd say that this was a pretty good pick. So although you can definitely argue with me on Control for sure. All right, best remake remaster. This is where Final Fantasy VII is deserving of its spot. I forgot to change the placements of all the pictures, but you get the point. But yeah, this is where Final Fantasy VII should be as far as nominee, because again, it's really good, but it's a remake. But it's a really damn good remake. So again, I don't think I need to really express how good Final Fantasy VII Remake is. Everyone loved Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, Rebirth actually came out last week, or if not, it's coming out real soon. Yeah, I'm just gonna triple check. Yeah, it just came out a few days. Yeah, it just came out a few days ago. So, because keep in mind, this game is only the first half of the original Final Fantasy VII, because Final Fantasy VII is a long-ass game. So, they split the development into two. So, this being the first half, and they just came out with the second half. So, which, hint, hint, may or may not be nominated for next time. So, for 2024. But yeah, I would definitely say that this is definitely worthy. Even though it's just only one half, the amount of content in this game is worth it alone. But you know what else is also a really good remake of a game from the late 90s? That I've actually talked about plenty of times before. Black Mesa. So, again, you guys know, and I feel like I'm being a dead horse here. Even, to be fair, when I streamed Half-Life 1 and its expansions back in November, I started to actually appreciate the game a bit more than I used to, because I used to be a straight-up Half-Life 1 hater, because, and admittedly, while yes, I have softened on the game, I still think that people overblow that game to fucking proportion, especially when you compare it to other games that came out around that same time. It is not one of the best shooters of the fucking 90s, let alone of all time, people. I've played hundreds of first-person shooters since, and even from that same year. I know what the fuck I'm talking about. That being said, I played Black Mesa Remake. I think I played it 2 years after this came out. The paid version. It's really fucking good. Honestly, I think I really like Black Mesa way more than the original Half-Life 1. Because, this game basically fixed all the issues that I had with the original Half-Life. And since it is on the Source engine, the same engine as Half-Life 2, it makes it way better for me personally, as I'm someone who's a much bigger Half-Life 2 fan than Half-Life 1. So, at the end of the day, if you're someone who's kind of afraid to play Half-Life 1, go play Black Mesa. This is a much better version of the game. So, there are some issues with it, but trust me when I say this. This game is the game you should be playing. So, another really amazing remake, or remaster in this case, the Command & Conquer remasters of Red Alert and the original game. So, yeah, EA just kind of dropped this, or I know EA owns the rights, but some whoever made this, you get or whoever remastered this, you guys did a really amazing job, because this now makes these games very accessible, because the only way that people were able to play these was through getting one of those like PC discs that I have on my shelf right there in order for you to play. Because they never re-released these older Command and Conquer games. Now people are able to play at least the first two Command and Conquer games, which is awesome, because these games are fun. So they do have that issue with a lot of 90s RTS games where it's like you only control one guy per like squad, but I can forgive it since this was one of the earlier of that genre. So, and also this game, the Command, like, I need to play Command and Conquer for you guys. Like, I don't know why I haven't for you, because these games are fucking awesome. But that's a story for another day. And then we've got Demon Souls remake, the remake of the 2009, basically the game that puts From Software. It wasn't the game that put them on the map, but it got them, massive attention, and basically created the Soulsborne genre as well, sub-genre of thing. I don't fucking know. That type of RPG there. Like, it was the game that created all that shit. And truth be told, it's beautiful in a, gothic sort of way. And yes, it's going to be hard as fuck, but I am willing to try it. I do own the original Demon Souls, though. But I am thinking of getting this Demon Souls. So yeah, I would definitely try it. I am definitely going to personally try it out for sure. And then we've got Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2, which is a remake of the first two Pro Skater Tony Hawk games. I mostly just do this not only just as a bone for like the sports fans, but also as actually kind of a genuinely good remake of a classic skateboarding series. So I would definitely check it out. And then Trials of Mana being a remake of a game from 1995 for, I think it was the Super Nintendo, I think. But whatever. I think that this game, I mean, I played the original, Secrets of Mana, and Trials of Mana looks pretty cool. I actually own Dawn of Mana on my PlayStation. I need to stop bragging about my collection. Whatever, you get the point. Pretty cool RPG. So, again, this year was actually a pretty good year for RPGs, I'd say. So, but what did I ultimately choose? I think it should be pretty obvious what I chose. Okay, it's actually a bit closer than some people might think, but I'll explain. So, the best remake/remaster, in my opinion, goes to Final Fantasy VII. So, it's pretty obvious as to why this is an amazing remake. I don't think I need to, explain what everyone else has explained. It's a revitalization of the entire game. But if I'm going to be honest, it was actually pretty close between this and Black Mesa. But why is that? Because Black Mesa made me at least begin to appreciate Half-Life 1 a little bit more. And it actually made me really like being in Black Mesa more. So, admittedly, that's kind of why that one was a bit closer. But as far as the objectively better game, I do think that Final Fantasy VII Remake is probably the objectively better, choice. It's a safer choice, but considering just how massive this game is, and this is only the first half of it, it makes more sense to nominate this as the better of the two. And also it helps that this game uses real-time battles as opposed to the turn-based combat, which, nothing against turn-based combat, but it helps people get into these games a bit better. Okay. Oh, fucking boy. We've got... Shit, we've been at this for way too long and we haven't even gotten to the fucking annoying ones. Oh my god. Okay. Best art direction. So, best visual style. This is a bit subjective, but what did the Game Awards nominate for best visual art style? Come fucking on. They nominated Last of Us, like, for really? Really? Like, what the fuck is wrong with these guys? They were so fucking desperate to give this thing so many fucking awards. Like, again, even if you fucking love Last of Us Part 2, you have to agree this does not fucking deserve to be on here. And I'm being serious. I will think, no, this wasn't nominated. Let me look up the Wikipedia page for it. Because this was nominated for Best Art Direction of... Yeah, look. Look. Last of Us fucking Part 2 is right there. That is actually... That is how you know they got fucking paid to put that shit right there. You cannot convince me otherwise. You cannot convince me that Sony did not pay the Game Awards to put that shit right there. You just cannot. See, this is why this fucking Game Awards was a disaster. It's because they kept nominating Last of Us Part 2 for literally as the worst option for every single one of the things that they were choosing it for. And on top of all that, they were also giving wins to a lot of games that frankly were just only popular at the time. Like, this is just example, this, like, and it also didn't help that, like, this award ceremony was done virtually only because of the pandemic, and so there wasn't anyone who was gonna give them shit about it until after the fact, and it's just like, this was a fucking disaster, dude. So yeah, fuck no, this shouldn't be on here. And I mean, again, since Final Fantasy VII is a remake, yes, it looks visually amazing, but it's more so just because of its graphical fidelity, which again, the graphical fidelity is not the same thing as art direction. So that shouldn't be on here. Ghost of Tsushima, again, as much as I respect Ghost of Tsushima, it also should not be on here because it's not a game that has a visual style. So, meaning the only two that should be on here is Ori and Hades. So, I mean, Ghost of Tsushima won this. This is honestly the worst category for it too, which makes it even worse. So, because again, it should win awards, but this is literally the worst award that it won, because it shouldn't have won this award at all. So what did I end up nominating? Ori, Deep Rock, Neo, and Hades. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious with Ori and Hades. I mean, just look at their art covers. Like, Hades with that more comic book sort of look, and then Ori with the almost like Japanese calligraphy inspired art direction with Ori. But then I also gave the nod to Deep Rock Galactic, as it is a very, blocky, cartoony sort of look that honestly looks pretty cool. And then Neo 2, because, well, yes, this is like, a more realistic looking game, it still has a visual style to it, specifically because of a lot of the enemies that you fight in the game. So, admittedly, art direction was a pretty hard choice for me. I could have chosen Doom Eternal as well, but admittedly, Actually, you know what? We're gonna have to make another addendum. So we're adding Doom Eternal as like a thing, because now that I think about it, it makes more sense to also have Doom Eternal. So yeah, I know this is like after the fact, but shut up. I don't care. This is my stream. So yeah, because with Doom Eternal, it actually has like a visual style to it with a lot of the demons. So now that I think about it, yeah, like that, it definitely deserves to be there. So especially since they also stylized Doom Guy himself. So I would say that like this is a pretty good. These are what the game should have been the nominees for. But let's get into the game that won. So, best game, like the best art direction in a game for 2020. Hades. So, I mean, again, this game has a very comic book look to it. Like, it's very cleaned out, but it's a very visually appealing style. And it actually has become very iconic with this game in particular. It isn't something that's new. As a matter of fact, the other games that Supergiant have made has the same exact style to it. But the difference is, or not, it's not really the difference, but it's just the fact that like this game was able to make itself look apart from everything else. You have to give kudos to. And it blends well with that sort of fantasy and mythological look that the game already has. So, yeah, no. This is easily best art direction. Not Ghost of Tsushima. And definitely not fucking Last of Us Part 2. Get the fuck out of here, man. I'm sorry, I'm getting frustrated. But admittedly, this is dragging a bit longer than I was anticipating. And I'm getting more pissed off the more I think about that fucking game. Because, well, unfortunately, speaking of, we got Best Narrative. So, did the Game Awards back themselves away from giving out shitty awards? No. They nominated it again. And then they also nominated Ghost of Tsushima and Hades and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Which, again, that one's all... Again, that game shouldn't even be on these lists. Because Final Fantasy VII, like, that's a narrative that has existed in 1997. It's not a new narrative. You can only change so much. So, as for Hades, I agree. Again, because, there's like I mentioned at the beginning of this, there's like a lot of cool dynamics they can have that is between Zagreus and Hades, as well as the other, underworld pantheon that Zagreus is around. And that leads to a lot of cool, interesting banter and dialogue. And then Ghost of Tsushima, while it's not as story heavy as like a lot of games, like there's still like, that sort of tension that is being, brought upon by, everyone involved, especially since their home is being invaded. Granted, if you actually read a history book, the Mongols had no chance. Sorry, spoiler alert. But it still leads to a lot of tension, and a lot of just sort of built up, like, stakes for the people that this game, like, showcases. So at the end of the day, like, this one has a bit of a weaker justification. It's not entirely weak, but there could be better. 13 Sentinels Aegis run, I kind of forgot about. Again, if you're into those types of games, that is fine, but it's just not really my thing. personally. So, but yeah, this is the time that I remind you that fucking Last of Us Part 2 won this award as well. Again, I'm taking a level 3 film writing class for this semester, and literally everything that this game is doing is going against the tenements of what my writing class is doing. Again, the placement of like the story bits make no fucking sense. They have a lot of telling and not showing. The fact that this game made everyone just straight up not give a shit about a potential, third game in the series. And unfortunately, starting this massive fucking wave of Last of Us related content that Sony's been milking for the past 4 fucking years. And then they have a bunch of fucking paid, they basically paid the fucking Game Awards to be like, let's give this game a bunch of fucking awards. This game, Last of Us Part 2, is the best fucking game to exist since goddamn Metal Gear Solid. It's the next coming of Jesus Christ. It's like, you fucking hacks, man. It's not, no. And also, if you hate this game, you're a fucking sexist, which, I mean, to be fair, there are fuckers like that, and if you genuinely do think that, you're a fucking idiot. But that's not what people like me hate about this game. People like me hate this game because it's a shit narrative. It's another fucking game that is it's given the Sony special treatment, and it's overrated as fuck. I'm just gonna be blunt about it. So, what would I choose instead? So, I did choose Ghost of Tsushima and Hades, but I also chose Yakuza Like a Dragon, and I chose Half-Life Alyx. Yakuza Like a Dragon basically being way more, like I said, it's more chill, but it still has its serious moments, where you do feel about, your clan, and just kind of the stakes that are being risen, especially since this is kind of okay, this game goes in between both 2020 and like the early 2000s. Yeah, it's one of those games where it has 2 different time periods, but it kind of ties that in narratively to where it all culminates, because yeah, and technically this is Yakuza 7 as far as like, the mainline, series goes. And so everything was mostly building up to this sort of like, final like climactic situation going on, and you do feel for everyone involved. So again, the fact that this was not nominated is fucking criminal. So also the fact that Half-Life Alyx was not nominated for any awards, way more fucking criminal. Like, Half-Life fans are fucking crying in a corner right now, like being reminded that Half-Life Alyx was not nominated for shit. So, like, yeah, they're just lying down in the fucking corner, just in tears. So, but you know what? I pity them. So, the best narrative for 2020 in terms of video games goes to, this is going to surprise some people, Half-Life Alyx! Again, this is where I start to fucking, apologize to the Half-Life community, who I feel like I made them all just fucking just cry in a corner in tears, like the Game Awards did. But I have to be honest with you guys. I know I give Half-Life 1 a lot of shit, but it's mostly because I do find this world to be super fascinating. Partially because Half-Life 2 expanded upon the potential that was there that the original game just frankly didn't, because, you know, the original game is basically just a Quake clone. So to see a game that was able to take it to the next level. Granted, it doesn't necessarily tie directly into the potential narratives for a potential Half-Life 3. Okay, well, it does, but, like, it's obviously in between Half-Life 1 and 2, but, like, you know what I mean. Like, it helps bridge the gap between. It's more of a game that kind of helps bridge the gap. And, well, it brings light to a lot of the questions that people potentially had about, you know, Half-Life 2's original storyline, and as to why there was just a lot of stuff that was going on in that game. But also, there's a lot of stuff in this game that I'm not gonna spoil, because I don't like to spoil good games for you guys. But there are some moments in that game that have massive consequences for the potential of, like, the Half-Life universe, if Valve ever chooses to do it, because they're allergic to making games, as we established. But they all, like, I think the reason why this game especially was so effective with its, you know, narrative is because it's in VR. This is how you use VR effectively, guys. Is, you know, this and Star Wars Squadrons are the prime example on how you should be using virtual reality in gaming. You use it as both an immersive and storytelling tool. You don't just use it as, like, some sort of gimmick that you use that you can do pretty much in every other game. Like, you gotta give us a reason. And this game and Star Wars Squadron, those are games that gave us reasons to buy a VR headset and buy a bunch of, you know, spend hundreds of dollars on something so that we can experience, frankly, one of the best examples of how you could do a VR game correctly. So, yeah, there. Half-Life Alex, you get the win on this one. So, but spoiler alert, I don't know if I would choose you as game of the year, though, because, again, VR is just kind of a very niche thing. So that's slight spoiler, unfortunately, but I do respect the game. All right, game of the year. Let's get this over with, because this was a fucking disaster. Everyone knows what's coming up. I don't even think I need to hide why this was a fucking disaster. I mean, it's been pretty obvious as to why. But let's do it anyways. So these were all the games that were nominated. You're sensing a bit of a pattern with this fucking thing, by the way, if you aren't familiar, right? So the games that were nominated was Animal Crossing New Horizons, Doom Eternal, so those came out the same day, by the way, so Barbieheimer, okay. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and Hades. Yeah, Sony definitely fucking paid Jeff Keighley to give this game of the year. By the way, this game won how many awards did it win again? It won 7 awards, by the way. Like, yeah, it won Game of the Year. It won Best Narrative. It won fucking Best Action Adventure. It won Best Audio Design. It won Best Innovation to Accessibility, which, I mean, to be fair, I will give the game this. There's a lot of accessibility options in it, so I will give credit where credit is due. That's the only category that it fucking won, though. Or it should have won. What else? What the fuck? Why is this? Oh, sorry, yeah. Game of the Year. Game Direction. Narrative. Audio Design. Best Performance. And then Innovation to Accessibility. And then Best Action Adventure. It fucking swept the Game Awards. And it, frankly, did not fucking deserve it. It absolutely fucking didn't. This is why I am making this series, by the way. It's because shit like this, it's because shit like this, I'm so fucking sick and tired of getting rewarded. Because this game does not deserve any of that fucking praise. Except for innovation and accessibility. I will give it that, because one thing I will admit that is actually kind of cool about this game is it has a lot of stuff like, you know, visual enhancements, as well as, you know, trigger button stuff. You can change the button layouts. Like, that's cool. That is one thing. That is like the one thing I will give Last of Us Part 2, is that it has a lot of shit that not a lot of games have. And that's, you know, that sort of accessibility stuff. That's pretty cool. Everything else, it should not have won. Game of the fucking year? My goddamn ass. This game literally is one of the fucking worst examples on, you know, snooty, like, you know, rich asshole corporate schlop that we've seen in a long, not a long time, but it's one of the biggest examples of just the big egos that a game company could have. So, and again, and to think that we got a fucking remake of the original game, and then a television show, and then a fucking remaster, and they're already working on the sequel. And yet, the planned movie that my favorite fucking character, owned by the same company, just gone. That's where, admittedly, my spite with Last of Us comes from. Is that my favorite franchise was killed so that shit like this could exist. So, and it's not just Sly Cooper. Shit, I'll even say this. There's a lot of Naughty Dog, a lot of employees at Naughty Dog don't want to be making Last of Us. They're fucking sick and tired of it themselves. They want to make a new Jak and Daxter. They want to make like a new IP, but Sony's not letting them. Because Sony wants to milk this shit dry. They want to make every ounce of money out of their shit fucking zombie apocalypse game that, may I fucking remind you, is not the most original game out there. There's been hundreds, if not thousands, of games that have done the same exact shit that Last of Us has done. It's really not that special. Shit. Uncharted did the same shit that Last of Us did. in terms of gameplay. So no, fuck this series. Like this game, like once Last of Us Part 2 came out, that's when Sony basically, that in my opinion was the beginning of the end with Sony with the PlayStation. Because here's the I mean, I know a lot of people had issues with PlayStation 3, but at least they kept to their guns with the exclusives. There's some fucking banger exclusives on the PlayStation 3 that just absolutely got snubbed because of Sony's admittedly stupid pricing of that console. You know, like obviously the Uncharted games, the Ratchet & Clank Future games, the Killzone games, Resistance, God of War 3, Gran Turismo 5, the Little Big Planet games for a lot of people. Like, shit, I even stand for Sly 4. I know a lot of I know there's like a lot of people who shit on Sly 4, but I don't fucking care. I think that game's a fucking 9 out of 10. So, and noticed as well that Sony, with the PlayStation 4, they've released a lot less exclusives as of late. Because keep in mind that they pushed out shit like Knack in the Order 1886. Like in the early years of that console. And then proceeded to double down on a lot of those really linear experiences with stuff like Last of Us Part 2. Or, I don't know, it's just... I'm complaining because I want fucking good media, and like it's shit like this that just makes me very cynical about the world, especially when it comes to shit that I love. And again, it's not me wanting to be like, oh, we should just milk those those old franchises until the end of time. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that Sony's priorities are very skewed, and that Sony is basically playing favorites with a lot of franchises that clearly a lot of people are getting sick and tired of, including myself. So, all I'm trying to say is, don't fucking... I mean, just don't fucking act like you didn't exist before 2013, Sony. Like, we're not fucking idiots. Because again, they're thinking of remaking Horizon Zero Dawn, a game that's not even 10 years old yet. That game came out in 2017. Why are you remaking that game? Like, why? Like, where's the next Killzone? Or shit, where's the next new IP for Guerrilla Interactive? Like, at this point, just make something new. Ghost of Tsushima was something new, and that was successful. Hell, that was the fastest selling game of all time, actually, like, apparently. Like, it sold, like, fucking, what? Like, 3 million copies in, like, the first, like, it sold, like, it sold, like, a ridiculous amount in, like, its first week. It's, like, it was the fastest selling video game of all time. Let me look it up. Okay, GTA 5 is still the fastest selling. But okay, this was the fastest selling Sony exclusive. Okay, that's still really fucking impressive for you guys. And it is proof that, if you take risks and make something new, then it will pan out amazing for you guys. So yeah, that's all I'm trying to say, is that, like, make new shit. Like, make, like, actually, like, new IPs. And if you aren't afraid, and if you're afraid of making a new IP, then just go back to your old IPs that you haven't touched in over a fucking decade. Like, maybe what you're doing right now isn't entirely working? Well, unfortunately it is, because this fucking game sold millions of fucking dollars too, so what do I fucking know? So, but yeah, you get the point. As for the other fucking nominees, I mean, obviously, I would repeating myself with Final Fantasy VII, and I'm not a big, like, I'm not as familiar with Animal Crossing, so those wouldn't be nominated. But I would replace those three options with Yakuza Like a Dragon. These other games are exactly what, like, they're fine. So, but yeah, let's just get over with the fucking this, because it should be pretty obvious what I'm going to be choosing. So, the Game of the Year for 2020 award goes to Ghosts of Tsushima. Take notes, Sony. This is what you should be doing. And thank God the people from the studio that made my favorite series, they still know how to fucking rock it. So, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this, but it should be pretty obvious why this should be the Game of the Year. Like, yes, again, this is a Sony... This is also a Sony game, but again, the difference between this and Last of Us Part 2 is this is an original IP. It takes risks. It tries to tell a completely new story, basing it off of historical settings, and just being a fucking badass game overall. So, and this game actually rewards you for exploring. Like, this game doesn't just rely solely off its narrative to try to sell it to you. It sells it off its gameplay too. Like, and again, this game is beautiful, and it represents just kind of the tail end of the 8th generation of consoles, for whatever that's worth. So, at the end of the day, this is what you should have fucking nominated, Sony. And the fact that you didn't is pretty sad. That being said, I am looking forward to Sucker Punch's next game, because if this game was as good as it was, I'm actually genuinely curious to see where their next, where like their next thing goes. So, but yeah, that's just, so yeah, I'm sorry if it seems like I'm just very bitter. It's just, I am so sick and tired of Sony shit as of late. A lot of people are, to be frank. But yeah, let's recap, shall we? So, these are the awards that were given out tonight. So, Best Indie Game went to Hades. Best Game by a New Studio went to Deep Rock Galactic. Best Action Adventure went to Ghost of Tsushima. Best RPG went to Yakuza Like a Dragon. Best Shooter Game went to Doom Eternal. Best Sim went to Star Wars Squadrons. Best Multiplayer went to Deep Rock Galactic. Best DLC went to Metro Exodus Sam Story. Best Remake went to Final Fantasy VII. Best Art Direction went to Hades. Best Narrative went to Half-Life Alyx, and the Game of the Year went to Ghost of Tsushima. So, as far as top 10 favorites, just kind of a general thing, these were the top 10 personal favorites of the year. Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Doom Eternal, Deep Rock Galactic, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Star Wars Squadrons, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Black Mesa, Command & Conquer Remastered, and Neo 2. And as a final bonus round, let's talk about guilty pleasures. So, these are games that, like, I would have never nominated, but I kind of like anyways. Zombie Army 4 Dead War being the sequel, like the spin-off sequel of the Sniper Elite Zombie Army games. It's just dumb fun. I just think it's kind of cool. And then yeah, Resident Evil 3 remake. It's a inferior remake, which is why I know it's an inferior remake. It's only half a game, but I still think that it still at least is worthy of a nod for being a pretty damn good recreation of at least the first half, like the first part of like Resident Evil 3. Because keep in mind, Resident Evil 3 was split into 2 like chapters, so it's kind of awkward. But at the end of the day, Resident Evil 3 I still respect as a remake. I already mentioned earlier XCOM Chimera Squad. I actually find to be pretty enjoyable, especially for a more tactical-esque XCOM game. It's just a shame that it wasn't really that popular in the public's eye. Amnesia Rebirth, a return to the Amnesia series. I think this game was pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty easy. Like, there isn't really a lot of, monsters in this game in comparison to the previous games, but I still think this game just got overshadowed hard. And of course, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Yes, the game is way too long and it is way too bloated, but it's still an Assassin's Creed game, and I still think that the world is really cool. Especially since, this is a Viking Age England recreation, which I think is pretty cool. And then bonus honorable mentions go to Phasmophobia and Friday Night Funkin', but because those games are in early access, they couldn't have qualified. But I do want to give them the nod for being huge impacts to come out of 2020. So that concludes this episode of the Caspian Game Awards. I'm sorry if this episode seemed to be a bit pessimistic. It's just, this was a terrible, terrible Game Awards. It was actually a pretty decent year for gaming, but the fact that they awarded literally some of the worst games this year was actually pretty sad. So, and that's kind of reflective of just my mood about this in general. So, don't worry, next time things aren't going to be as sour. 2019 is actually going to be alright. It's going to be okay. So, and I'm really excited to talk about the games that were nominated in the 2010s, especially since, admittedly, I didn't really keep up to Game Award tabs as much, sort of like before 2020. But I'm still really excited to talk about those. So I hope you guys are ready for that ride, and I hope you guys did enjoy this regardless. If you guys did, make sure to hit that follow button down below and turn the bell icon so that you'll be notified exactly when I'll be streaming. While you guys are at it, make sure to check out links up below as well, specifically the Discord, SoundCloud, and YouTube links. And if you guys haven't already, you can also hit that subscribe button. If you can't necessarily do that, that is completely fine. I'm just glad that you guys took your time to watch this. But regardless of all that though, make sure to share the stream to other people as well, and continue to be awesome people in the process. But until then, I'll see you guys on the next one. Hopefully I'll be able to get my next playthrough in with this week. So until then, I'll see you guys later. Have a good night. Bye.